In 1972, a 12-year-old girl in a wheelchair taught the Godfather of Soul something that would echo through music history forever. The Regal Theater in Chicago became the stage for a moment that proved greatness isn't measured in platinum records, but in purple velvet and crooked gold thread. The backstage area of the Regal hummed with controlled chaos that October evening. Word had spread through Chicago's South Side that James Brown was performing tonight, and the energy behind the curtains felt electric. Fans who had won backstage passes clustered in groups, reporters adjusted their tape recorders, and local radio personalities practiced their questions. The air hung thick with hairspray, nervous sweat, and anticipation. Staff members in burgundy uniforms rushed back and forth, carrying costume pieces, adjusting lighting cues, checking microphone cables. The famous Flames were already in their dressing room, vocal warm-ups echoing down the hallway. Someone tested the horn section, bright trumpet blasts cutting through the conversation. Tucked into the corner near the dressing room hallway sat Maya Johnson in her wheelchair. She held something wrapped in brown paper against her chest, tied with a red ribbon that her trembling hands couldn't quite get to lay flat. Maya was 12 years old, her legs weakened by polio 5 years earlier. But what her legs couldn't do, her spirit compensated for. And her love for James Brown's music burned with an intensity that sometimes surprised even her mother. Two ushers nearby kept glancing at Maya, their whispers loud enough to hear. "She thinks he'll want some homemade craft project," one muttered. "Mr. Brown gets real gifts, expensive things." Maya heard every word. Each syllable landed like a physical blow. She looked down at the package, and suddenly all she could see were the flaws. The uneven letters now looked childish. The velvet seemed cheap. Maybe they were right. Maybe she had been foolish to think her gift would matter to someone like James Brown. Her mother, standing behind the wheelchair, placed a gentle hand on Maya's shoulder. She had heard too, and her jaw was tight with anger. But her voice stayed soft. "Don't you listen to them, baby. What you made comes from your heart, and that matters more than anything money can buy." But Maya wasn't sure anymore. The confidence that had carried her through the long bus ride, through getting backstage passes from a radio contest, through the waiting, was crumbling. She wanted to disappear, to go home where she could cry without an audience. Then the backstage door burst open and everything changed. James Brown had arrived. The effect was instantaneous. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Cameras started clicking. James Brown moved through the space like a force of nature, dressed in a shimmering gold and black suit. His platform shoes clicked rhythmically against the floor. His famous processed hair gleamed. The presence he carried made you understand immediately why they called him the Godfather of Soul. The JBs surrounded him, a moving constellation of talent. The crowd surged forward, voices calling his name, hands reaching, cameras flashing in stuttering white light. Maya's heart hammered. This was supposed to be her moment, but the wall of people made it impossible for her wheelchair to move forward. She tried to call out, but her voice disappeared into the roar. She tried to move forward, but bodies blocked every angle. Then came the moment that nearly broke her. One of the ushers who had mocked her leaned toward a security guard and whispered something with a dismissive wave toward Maya. The guard glanced at her with complete indifference, nodded, and turned away. A girl in a wheelchair with a wrapped package wasn't worth his attention. Tears welled in Maya's eyes. All the hope she'd carried, all the hours of work, all the belief that this moment would matter, collapsed. The ushers had been right. She was invisible. Her gift was nothing. She wanted to disappear. But then something shifted. James Brown was making his way through the crowd, acknowledging fans with quick nods, his bodyguards creating a path toward the dressing rooms. But his eyes, sharp from decades of reading rooms and people, caught something everyone else had missed. Through all the shouting and flashing cameras, he noticed the small figure in the corner. A young girl in a wheelchair, holding something wrapped against her chest. But it wasn't just her presence. It was her face, the tears streaming down her cheeks. The expression of absolute defeat he recognized because he had worn it himself as a child in Barnwell, South Carolina. It was the way people around her were ignoring her. James Brown knew that feeling from his own childhood in Barnwell. He'd been abandoned, dismissed, told he didn't matter. Something in Maya's expression triggered those memories, and he made a decision that would change everything. He stopped walking. The crowd grew louder, expecting him to address them. But instead, he turned to his road manager and said something quiet but firm. The man started to object, gesturing toward the dressing rooms and the show schedule. But James shook his head with finality and pointed directly at Maya. With that, he began walking straight toward her. The backstage area transformed. Conversations evaporated mid-word. Fans craned their necks, confused. Why was he walking toward the corner? Toward a girl in a wheelchair most of them hadn't even noticed? Maya couldn't process what was happening. The man whose music had kept her alive was walking straight toward her. Not toward the loud fans, not toward the journalists, not toward the VIPs, toward her. James Brown brushed past eager hands. He ignored flashing cameras. His platform shoes clicked steadily until he stood directly in front of Maya's wheelchair. Then he did something that would become Regal theater legend. He knelt down. Not a polite bend, but actually knelt, bringing himself completely to Maya's eye level. His expensive suit touched the dusty floor, and his eyes, intense and impossibly kind, looked directly into Maya's tear-filled gaze. "What you got there, young sister?" he asked, his voice carrying that distinctive rasp but softened with genuine curiosity. Maya's hands trembled as she lifted the gift. Her voice cracked. I made this for you, Mr. Brown. Me and my mama. We listened to your songs while we worked, every night. For 3 weeks?" Before she could say more, the usher with the thin mustache let out a quiet snort. "It's just some homemade thing, nothing special." What happened next made the entire backstage area go still. James Brown's head turned slowly toward the usher, not quickly or angrily, but with deliberate movement. His expression wasn't rage, it was disappointment, the kind that makes a person feel smaller than any shouted rebuke ever could. The usher's smirk died instantly. Color drained from his face. He stepped backward, unable to hold James Brown's gaze, suddenly aware that dozens of people had heard his comment. James held that look for what felt like an eternity. Then he turned back to Maya, and his expression transformed completely. Soft, gentle, infinitely patient. He carefully took the package from Maya's shaking hands, handling it as if it were made of glass. James carefully unwrapped the brown paper. The purple velvet emerged, gold thread spelling "Please, please, please," catching the light. The backstage area went completely silent. "This," James said, his voice thick with emotion. "This is beautiful, young sister. You made this? With your own hands? You and your mama?" Maya nodded, tears streaming freely now. But different tears. Not humiliation, but recognition. Being seen. Mattering. "Yes, sir. We listened to your songs while we worked. Papa's got a brand new bag, and please, please, please. Your music helps me do my exercises. When I don't think I can do anymore, when it hurts too much, your songs help me keep going. Something flickered across James Brown's face. Pain, recognition, understanding. He stood slowly, still holding the purple microphone cover like precious metal, and faced the crowd. "You see this?" he called out, his voice carrying authority. "You see what this young sister made for me? With her hands, with her heart, with her time?" He held it higher so everyone could see. The purple velvet glowed. The gold stitching shimmered. "This is worth more than any expensive gift I've ever received in my life. You know why? Because this came from love. Real love. This came from someone who actually listened to the music, who felt what I was trying to say, who understood." His eyes swept across the backstage area, landing on the ushers who had mocked Maya. "Some of y'all need to learn something tonight. Real value isn't measured in dollars. It's not measured in how expensive something is or how perfect it looks. It's measured in heart. It's measured in effort. It's measured in love." Every person watching felt the weight of his words physically. Those who had dismissed Maya stared at the floor, faces flushed with shame that would probably stay with them for years. James turned back to Maya, kneeling again. "Young sister, I want you to know something, and I want you to never forget it. I'm going to use this tonight, on stage, in front of everyone, and I'm going to remember you and what you made for me every time I perform." Maya couldn't speak. Her throat had closed from emotion. All she could do was nod as tears continued streaming. James took both her hands. "You know what I see when I look at you? I see someone who the world tried to tell didn't matter. But you didn't stay down, did you? You keep fighting. You keep creating. That's what Please, Please, Please is really about. Never giving up, never stopping, always pushing forward no matter what." He stood, still holding her hands. "You remind me why I do this. Not for money or fame. I do this for people like you who need the music, who use it to keep going when things get hard." James turned to his road manager. "Make sure Maya and her mother have front row seats tonight. Front row center, best seats in the house." But James wasn't finished. He called over Bobby Bird. "Bobby, get me a microphone, one of the performance mics." Bobby returned quickly with a professional stage microphone. James took it carefully, and then, with movements that felt ceremonial, he slid Maya's handmade purple velvet cover over the microphone. It fit perfectly, the purple fabric settling around the mic with the gold letters facing forward, catching the light beautifully. James held up the covered microphone, and then something magical happened. He began tapping out a rhythm. The one. That distinctive funk beat he had pioneered. Tap, 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 tap. The sound echoed like a heartbeat. Then James Brown started singing, right there backstage with no stage, no lights. Just his voice and Maya's gift. "Please, please, please, don't go." The backstage area transformed into church. People swayed without thinking. Some cried openly. Others stood in awe, witnessing something rare and sacred. When James finished, the silence felt holy. Then applause erupted, thunderous. But James held up one hand, and it stopped immediately. He handed the microphone to Maya. "You hold this for me until showtime. This is your microphone now, mine and yours together." Then James leaned close, his voice dropping. "My mama left when I was 4 years old. Just walked out and never came back. I know what it's like when the world tells you that you don't matter, that you're not good enough. But I learned something. I learned that the people who say those things are wrong. And the only voice that really matters is the one inside you that says keep going, keep creating, Keep giving your love to the world, even when the world doesn't deserve it. You got that voice inside you. I can hear it. Don't ever let anyone silence it. Maya nodded, holding the microphone like it was the most precious thing she had ever touched. Because it was. That night, 40 minutes into the show, James Brown stopped the music. He held up one hand, the band went silent, and he walked to the front of the stage. "I want to tell y'all something," James said. "Earlier tonight, I received a gift, and I want to share what happened, because I think it's important." The audience went silent, curious. "There's a young woman here tonight, named Maya Johnson. She's 12 years old. She's sitting right there in the front row with her mama." A spotlight found Maya and her mother, and suddenly 3,000 people were looking at this girl in a wheelchair. The audience started applauding. James held up the microphone, showing the purple velvet cover. "You see this? Maya made this for me. Her and her mama. 3 weeks of work. And you know what she told me? She told me that when she does her physical therapy, when the pain gets too bad and she wants to quit, she listens to my music." The theater erupted, but James held up his hand. Some people backstage mocked this gift. They mocked her. An angry murmur went through the crowd. "But let me tell you what I saw," James said, voice growing more passionate. "I saw love. I saw effort. I saw someone who didn't have money or resources, but had something more valuable. She had heart. She had soul. She had the courage to create something and offer it, despite knowing some people might reject it. And that courage, that's what real strength looks like." The applause was deafening. James waited for it to die down. "So I told Maya I would use this microphone cover tonight, and I'm going to keep using it. Because this isn't just a microphone cover. This is a reminder of what really matters. Not fame, not money. What matters is love. What matters is lifting each other up." James walked to the edge of the stage, looking directly at Maya. "Young sister, would you do me the honor of coming up here?" Maya's eyes went wide. Security guards appeared, carefully lifting Maya and carrying her, with her mother's help, up the stairs. They placed her gently in a chair at center stage. The audience was on their feet, applauding continuously, many crying. This was beyond entertainment. James knelt beside Maya's chair. "What's your favorite song, Maya?" "Please, please, please," she whispered. "That's what I thought," James said with a smile. He stood, faced the audience. "This next song is dedicated to Maya Johnson. This is for everyone who's been told they're not good enough. This is Please, Please, Please." The band started that classic introduction. But this performance was different. James sang with an intensity that went beyond showmanship. He poured everything into it, every lyric weighted with meaning. The purple microphone cover glowed in the stage lights, visible to everyone. When the song reached its climax, James did his famous cape routine. Bobby Bird came out with the cape, draping it over James's shoulders as he collapsed to the stage. But this time, when James threw off the cape and rose again, he walked directly to Maya. He took her hand and raised it high, presenting her to the audience. The Regal Theater exploded with applause that lasted 7 full minutes. People were cheering for Maya, for courage and love and human connection. James Brown kept every promise. Over the next 2 years, whenever he performed in Chicago, Maya Johnson was there. Front row center, every show. And James used that purple velvet microphone cover every time. But something else happened. James connected Maya with vocal coaches. Professional musicians from the JBs taught her about rhythm and pitch. Maya discovered she had a voice. Something special that carried the pain and joy of her life in every note. When Maya was 15, James invited her on stage to perform. She sang backup vocals on I Got You, I Feel Good, holding her own despite her nerves. The audience went wild. They had watched this girl's journey for 3 years, and now here she was performing. Local papers wrote about it. Radio DJs talked about it. Suddenly, people wanted to hear more of Maya Johnson. By 17, she was regularly performing with James Brown's Chicago shows. By 19, they recorded a duet, a song James wrote called The Purple Promise. It charted on R&B and established Maya as a real artist. Maya Johnson's career grew steadily through the 1970s and 1980s. She released 3 albums, each produced with help from the JB's members. Her music blended soul, funk, and gospel, with lyrics about perseverance and overcoming obstacles. Her 3rd album in 1984, titled Rolling Forward, achieved gold status and produced 2 top 10 R&B hits. The title track became an anthem for people with disabilities. Maya performed from her wheelchair, her powerful voice compensating for physical limitations. She became a voice for a community rarely represented in popular music. She toured extensively, finding a sustainable rhythm of performances, recordings, and advocacy. She spoke about accessibility in venues, representation in entertainment, the power of not giving up on dreams. James Brown remained a mentor and friend throughout. He appeared on her albums. She appeared at his shows. When critics suggested she was only successful because of his help, James would shut that down. Maya Johnson is successful because she has talent and she worked for it. I just opened a door. She walked through it herself. In 1999, Maya performed at a James Brown tribute concert at the Apollo Theater. She was 39, an established artist with a 2-decade career, but still nervous rolling onto that historic stage. James was in the audience, older now but still commanding. Maya sang the Purple Promise solo. Her voice filled the Apollo with emotion and power. When she finished, the audience erupted, but Maya had something to say. In 1972, I was a 12-year-old girl in a wheelchair who made a gift for her hero. I was mocked by adults who should have known better. But James Brown saw me. He valued my gift. He kept his promises. And most importantly, he told me I could do anything. Everything I am started that night at the Regal Theater. She looked at James. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for hearing me. Thank you for teaching me that the hardest working person isn't always the one on stage. Sometimes it's the person in the audience who fought just to get there. When James Brown passed away on December 25, 2006, Maya delivered a eulogy that captured something essential about the man she had known. James Brown taught me that greatness isn't just about talent or success. It's about how you treat people when you don't have to. He taught me that the measure of a person isn't their fame. It's their willingness to lift up others. Maya held up a photograph from 1972. Young James on stage at the Regal, holding a microphone covered in purple velvet and barely visible in the background. A 12-year-old girl in a wheelchair, watching with absolute wonder. This moment changed my life. One act of kindness can create ripples that last forever. James Brown believed in me for 34 years, and he never let me forget that I mattered. Maya continued performing into her 60s, focusing more on teaching young artists with disabilities. The purple microphone cover remained framed in her home, a constant reminder of that night. Greatness isn't measured in platinum records, Maya would tell them, echoing James Brown. It's measured in heart. It's measured in love. That's the lesson James Brown taught me. That's the lesson I'm teaching you. The story became parable, legend, lesson. Taught in music schools, shared in advocacy circles, told in churches. And through it all, one truth remained. Sometimes the smallest gesture carries more power than the loudest voice. Sometimes a purple velvet microphone cover with crooked stitching can open doors that seemed locked. Sometimes choosing kindness over dismissal can create ripples touching thousands of lives. That was the gift James Brown gave Maya Johnson on October 12, 1972. And it kept giving for more than 50 years, touching more lives than either could have imagined in that moment when a 12-year-old girl held out a handmade gift and the Godfather of Soul knelt down to receive it.